now we're going to see the right tools for the right job, linking training to linked data. Trina's going to be giving the presentation, but her colleague Ava worked on this as well. Ava Brillet is a senior instructor at the Library of Congress. Her work focuses on empowering staff to leverage information systems more effectively for their work. Her most recent projects have focused on training for a linked data environment. Trina, who's presenting today, is a cataloging policy specialist at the Library of Congress. She maintains and develops the library's subject vocabularies and descriptive cataloging policies. Her work focuses on making cataloging practices understandable, applicable, and interesting. Trina, please.
Thank you, Sasha. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me at today's session. As you just heard, my name is Trina Soderquist. I'm a cataloging policy specialist in the Policy Training and Cooperative Programs Division at the Library of Congress. My co-presenter is Ava Brillet, a senior instructor in PTCP. Unfortunately, she could not attend today, but we worked together to create this presentation. So today I'll be using the ADDIE instructional design model to frame our presentation. For our analysis, we will look at the shift from pilot to production, our learner population, and constraints and opportunities. For the design segment, we will discuss adult learning, flipped classrooms, and lesson planning. Our look at the training development will focus on the tools we use to create our training and how we made the training materials accessible. During the implementation segment, we will look at our training timeline and how we delivered the training materials. And finally, our training evaluation will consider how we collected feedback, the iterative nature of this training, and what lies ahead for the library's catalogers. So let's begin with a brief look at the shift from BibFrame cataloging pilots to working in full production in BibFrame. The first BibFrame cataloging pilot began in September 2015, and it was followed by the Phase 2 pilot in June 2017 and the Phase 2 expansion 2 years later. These pilots involved dozens of catalogers and were designed to test the viability of the BibFrame editors and to get feedback from catalogers on their ability to work in a linked data editor. During the pilots, catalogers entered bibliographic descriptions twice, once in the BibFrame editor and a second time in MARC. BFProd, or BibFrame in Production, is a project to fully incorporate Marva Quartz into the library's daily cataloging practices, eliminating the need to enter the same bibliographic description separately in two systems. Metadata descriptions created or updated in Marva Quartz are converted into MARC records in FOLIO and then are distributed. BFProd began in August 2024 with 5 catalogers from the library's Acquisitions and Bibliographic Access Directorate. So our BibFrame training was designed for the cataloging librarians, library technicians, and their supervisors in the Acquisitions and Bibliographic Access Directorate, or ABA. As you can see from this slice of the library's organizational chart, ABA is part of Discovery and Preservation Services, which is part of the Library Collections and Services Group. LCSG also includes Researcher and Collection Services, which includes special collections like the Geography and Map Division and the Music Division. RCS decided to wait to do BibFrame training after FOLIO implementation. So this allowed our BibFrame training and the BFProd project to focus primarily on monograph cataloging. So our pool of learners came from ABA, but did not include 3 of its divisions: the Acquisitions, Fiscal, and Overseas Support Division, not shown here, the Network Development and MARC Standards Office, and the Policy Training and Cooperative Programs Division. NDMSO is responsible for managing id.loc.gov and the BibFrame database, and they created the Marva Quartz linked data editor. PTCP, which is where Ava and I are situated, was tasked with developing the BibFrame training. The third member of our training team was Paul Frank, who also created the Marva manual. So as you might guess from looking at the names of the individual cataloging divisions in ABA, these divisions handle resources in a wide range of languages, scripts, and formats. So after collecting and confirming information from section heads and division chiefs, we ended up with a list of over 400 potential learners. Over half of them were librarians, almost a quarter were library technicians, an eighth were supervisors, and the remaining learners were contractors or volunteers, or they held another position. So you can probably imagine what some of our constraints were. The overseas offices literally spanned the globe, requiring us to block off training cohorts for individual offices and work outside our normal business hours. Similarly, we had to be flexible with scheduling sessions for our contractors, many of whom work evenings and weekends. An additional constraint was the fact that Marva is not being used for serials cataloging. Because of our arrangement with the concert program, the library's serials catalogers are still working in OCLC. But we encouraged serials catalogers to attend the training sessions because we believed that a well-informed cataloger can advocate for the Marva functionality that they need to do their work. A third constraint was the ongoing development of Marva Quartz. As learners were brought into training and as more catalogers and library technicians began using the tool, NDMSO received more feedback than ever before, prompting them to add features and functionality. And don't forget that while this was happening, the library was also engaged in FOLIO training, putting a strain on learners' capacities to process new information. On the other hand, this provided the training team with the opportunity to build our work off of the training plan being implemented for FOLIO and the Library Collections and Access Platform, or LCAP. Finally, our training focused on tasks and processes, not workflows. So early in the training development, we were encouraged by PTCP senior instructor Tara Hagan to focus on Marva as a tool. Limiting our scope allowed us to provide more targeted instruction while letting learners decide how to integrate their new skills into their workflows. So this brings us to the design process for the ABA staff training modules. First, I'd like to review Malcolm Knowles' adult learning theory to understand the distinct learning patterns of adult learners. Need to know. Adults prefer to know and understand the reasoning behind the instruction. Foundation. Instruction that acknowledges and leverages adult learners' previous experience is more likely to be successful. Self-concept. It is critical to build in the freedom for adult learners to choose their learning path. Readiness. Adults are often the most motivated to learn concepts that directly or immediately impact their work lives. Orientation. In most cases, adults prefer instruction that follows problem-based learning. And finally, motivation. Adults are more likely to respond to internal motivators than external motivators. So after considering these principles and our audience, we chose to adapt training being used and developed at the library for LCAP and FOLIO. We coupled a flipped classroom model with synchronous online sessions to provide contextual information that allowed learners to understand the need for instruction. In a traditional classroom or training environment, learners receive the first exposure to new content in the classroom and must process the material on their own time. In the flipped classroom model, learners explore the content on their own first, and synchronous training time is focused on processing, including working through problems and issues. As a result, the flipped classroom experience allows adult learners to guide their own learning and highlight what skills they wish to learn, as it directly impacts their work experience. Here's how our flipped classrooms and synchronous online sessions worked. First, the staff cohort being trained received introductory material via email that included the online synchronous session schedule and the links to the online modules. The first online synchronous session provided an overview of how to access the modules and lessons and how to engage with the content. Staff were then encouraged to complete one module prior to the second synchronous session, where we fielded questions based on the completed modules. This was followed by 3 more synchronous office hour type sessions focused on practice and staff questions. Learning support was delivered by a dedicated Microsoft Teams chat where learners could help each other or provide feedback to the developers in NDMSO. The training team also encouraged learners to create their own localized support groups to help each other solve problems and solidify workflows. Finally, learners had continual access to the Marva manual, session recordings available on Confluence, and the online modules. So to create the modules, the training team first identified learning objectives and created a scaffolded design for the content. This provided the structure for each module, which was broken down into short lessons. We recorded and edited the videos and hosted them on our internal staff training website to ensure library-wide availability. This structure allowed learners to identify and navigate the training quickly based on their own needs and previous experience. Learners who had a strong grasp of linked data principles or who knew the history of BibFrame at the library, for example, could navigate to and spend longer time on other modules. Most of the lessons included knowledge application activities, which were intended to be open-ended explorations of Marva and related tools. Learners were also encouraged to complete surveys after each lesson. These surveys provided us with immediate feedback on errors or areas where learners had questions. They also allowed us to keep track of learners' progress, which could then be added to their training transcript. Continuing to follow the ADDIE model, we'll briefly talk about the development of the training materials, highlighting the tools we used. So after outlining the content to be included in the modules, we created templates for the scripts, the PowerPoint slides, and the knowledge application activities to keep our delivery consistent. We recorded our videos using Camtasia. For the training website, we used WordPress to create separate pages for each module, with all the lessons for an individual module gathered on a single page. For accessibility, scripts and PowerPoint slides were included for download, and all videos included captioning. On the website, headings were used consistently to help with navigation. We deliberately chose to host materials on our training website to ensure continued and easy access to all LC staff. But most of the training materials are now also available publicly at the Catalogers Learning Workshop site. So let's talk in more detail about the training implementation. In this section, we'll discuss how we managed the training process to ensure all staff were trained within our timeframe. So as mentioned earlier, BFProd began in August with 5 catalogers from the Acquisitions and Bibliographic Access Directorate. They were followed by groups of catalogers who had previously participated in the library's BibFrame cataloging pilots. These early training cohorts received synchronous online training that loosely followed the learning structure being developed by the training team. So at this time, while Paul Frank was onboarding the initial cohorts, Ava and I were preparing training materials, gathering content for videos, recording them, and setting up a training space online that learners could return to as necessary. In early January, it was determined that we needed to train all ABA catalogers by the end of March. We began with 1-hour sessions for supervisors to introduce the material to them and to help them begin coaching their staff. To accommodate all the learners in ABA, we arranged the training in 2-week spans, with each of the 11 cohorts having up to 30 learners. These numbered cohorts overlapped. While Ava and I were onboarding cohort 5, for example, Paul was hosting office hours for cohort 4. Some learners chose to attend multiple cohorts. So many supervisors attended sessions with their staff, and many catalogers in the initial cohorts later attended a numbered cohort. So in all, we reached 360 learners, with some people attending more than one cohort or session. Some of the components that helped our training implementation succeed were establishing the time schedule and the scale of the training program. The bulk of the training took place over 12 weeks from January 21st to April 11th, when we managed overlapping numbered cohorts. Organizing groups of learners by cohort created a shared experience that allowed individuals to identify fellow learners and peer coaches. Our online modules provided clear, consistent messaging for learners, and by regularly scheduling sessions and repeating them weekly, we were able to accommodate many learners, some of whom dropped into additional sessions. All the sessions for the overseas offices and all of the office hours were recorded, so learners could catch up if they were not able to attend at their scheduled time. So as we consider our evaluation of the BibFrame and Marva training, we will refer to the Kirkpatrick model. This method for evaluating the effectiveness of training begins with the first level of criteria, reaction. The surveys offered at the end of each online lesson asked respondents to report on their confidence levels before and after training, thus capturing their initial reaction and allowing us to gauge the effectiveness of the training. Since the surveys were adapted from the LCAP training plan, our learners were already familiar with the format. To assess learning, the survey included areas for respondents to share specific feedback, including what they learned and what they wish had been covered in more detail. This helped us improve and develop the training materials. Our Microsoft Teams chat for catalogers working at BibFrame offered plenty of examples of the behavioral impact of the training, showing us how learners use their new skills to assist each other. We also have anecdotal evidence of behavioral changes attributed to the BibFrame and Marva training. The relative stability of the Marva Quartz linked data editor led to catalogers preferring to work in Marva during the library's transition to FOLIO. The information we gathered from our surveys, the Teams chat, and personal narratives provided us with rich feedback that we can use on future training iterations, including finishing out our fourth and final module, which is still in development. The fact that our BibFrame and Marva training program coincided with our ongoing LCAP implementation provided us with a unique opportunity to consider the nature of change in the workplace. We wanted our learners to feel empowered, able to rely on their knowledge of cataloging to help them understand a new tool and adapt it to their individual working styles. We also worked hard to keep the training informative and useful, but also entertaining and interesting. It is our hope that our fast-paced, high-energy transition to BibFrame and production encourage the ABA staff to be flexible and confident in the face of this change and future changes. The adoption of the Marva Quartz linked data editor as we transitioned into FOLIO and LCAP seemed to bear this out. And we hope to capitalize on this energy as we look forward to learning about official RDA in the coming months. So thank you again for joining me today. Please feel free to email us if you have any questions or comments. And if there's time, I will take questions now.
Thank you so much, Trina. You do have some time. So folks, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat or in the Slack and we can get them to her. Oh, we have one that came in. I may have missed this, but what does LCAP stand for?
That's the Library Collections and Access Platform. So it's our new library service provider. It's sort of, I have a slide about this actually, but it sort of encompasses the discovery layer as well as all of the FOLIO applications and all sorts of other things that are involved. So it's sort of the broader picture of what we're doing. I see the question about the trainings are publicly available. Sorry to beat you to that, Sasha. Yes, they're on Catalogers Learning Workshop, which is a service provided by the Library of Congress. The Cenobia training is there. I think somebody mentioned that earlier today. But the BibFrame, the Marva manual and the videos that, the training videos that we put together are there. I think the transcripts are there too, but I think the knowledge application activities are not. Oh, and thank you for including that link. So surprises during the training process, I guess, or anything that was easier or harder than I anticipated. I think putting together the videos was a lot more complicated than I anticipated, just gathering the content. And because Marva was being developed, sometimes it was hard to like pin down the product. So that's why, for example, I'm trying to put together a video about subject headings, assigning subject headings using Marva. But you know, I've been keeping up with the chat to see what people's questions are, and so it's just hard to pin down exactly what I need to address and how I can address it. I guess the other surprising thing is sometimes I've noticed people sort of would ask us, like during the first session, how many modules do you want us to do before we meet again? And we would tell them, well, if you could do the first module, that would be great. And then we would point out that in total, the first module, the videos are less than 20 minutes. So it's totally doable. Right now, all the videos we have it totals an hour. So it's really easy to drop in and do or not. So it's the timing thing, I think, that I wish people would understand. Really, it's not that much.
We have one more from Laura. Do you know more about the new discovery layer? Is it based on an existing platform or new, and how it relates to BibFrame and the output of cataloging activities?
So the new discovery layer is attached to our FOLIO implementation. So it's getting data from FOLIO, which is sort of, if you watch the videos and just every time you hear Voyager, just substitute FOLIO, because at the time we were working in Voyager and now we're working in FOLIO. So basically, catalogers work in Marva to develop their bibliographic description, and then they send it back to FOLIO where it's saved as MARC. And then the discovery layer uses FOLIO to populate its fields. And then the library's continuing to send out, as part of its distribution service, records in MARC, because that is an obligation we have. And thank you, May, for putting up the link to the training modules.
We still have a few minutes left if anyone has any questions that have popped up. Everyone's still processing.
It's okay.
It's
a lot.
Yeah. We have your contact. Thank you so much
Yes.
for that wonderful overview and for all of the resources that y'all are providing. It's a great presentation. Thank you, Trina.
Thank you so much.